Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you guys. Thanks everybody for coming. My name is Rick Bly. I'm the Chief of Police of Springfield Township. Tonight what we wanted to do was we wanted to invite everybody to this community gathering was just to kind of update everybody on some of the new technologies that the Police Department of Springfield Township has gotten over the last probably 2 years that we're still in the process of putting together. So some of the stuff is really interesting, and we just wanted to make sure that the community knows what we have out there, what style of policing, and in the tools that we have to help protect your community, help protect your safety, and to protect our officers too. Some of this stuff is a two-way street to keep everybody safe. So it's really important that we relay this information to you guys, because the community is the one that is supporting us to do all this stuff. I mean, you guys are the ones that are agreeing that, hey, yep, we want this, and we want our police department to be progressive. We want them to have the tools that they need. So we appreciate the community support from that. Our administrative staff, our trustees, our elected officials, Miss Christy Davis-Dukes is here, Joe Honorlaw, one of our elected officials, and Mark Burning, they're also here. And they give us great support as well and encourage us to come up with these new ideas and to keep our staff motivated to come up with these different trends that help fight the crime. And everybody knows the challenges that law enforcement's having in society today. So we just wanted to give you that opportunity to see what your police department has out there. One of the biggest things, and I'm not going to sit up here and talk the whole time, so we have different members of our staff. I'll kind of introduce them real quick if they want to come up. And all of these projects have been kind of headed by different members of the staff. They either came up with those ideas or they really took the project by the bull by the horns, and they kind of went with it. So it was good to see the whole staff and the whole police department getting behind some of these things. But to the far left is Lieutenant Matt Wilcher. He'll be presenting and talking a little bit. Sergeant Tom Mullins, Captain Chris Niehaus, and Captain Nick Peterson. And I know Lieutenant Eric Catron is back here. He's in charge of our detectives, so he gets to use a lot of this stuff too. So. But I'll just kind of go over some of the topics that we're going to be talking about. The biggest change I think departmentally for us as a whole is that we're just now getting body cameras. And Captain Chris Niehaus will talk a little bit about the body cameras, a little bit of the why it's taken us this long to do it, and where we're at today with it. But that's going to be a big thing, and I think the community needs to know that everything we're going to be doing now is going to be on video when we get out there. And he'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we'll have, some of the challenges that the community have that we've seen in the past with other agencies doing that. And like I said, why we haven't done it right now, I think the Captain Niehaus will be able to kind of explain where we're at and why we've made that decision to wait. License plate readers, we call those the LPRs. We've had those for a long time. That technology, they've been on our vehicles, some of our vehicles, and they just read all the license plate, and they give us a lot of good information for gathering intel. And we've got this technology now has come where we're able to put them stationary throughout the community to provide us something. And we'll go into a little bit of detail on that of what those strategies and what those license plate readers really do for us to help us and keep you guys safe too in your community. So virtual reality training simulator, this was something that our elected officials and our administration has really supported us over the last 2 years. This is a training, and a lot of it is where we put a headset on and we can put our officers in scenario-based reality right there and get that experience during training. And it's not just shoot, don't shoot scenarios. It's a whole bunch of different scenarios of maybe just de-escalation, how to talk to people and stuff like that. Captain Peterson will be hitting on that a little bit. Our drone program, as we know, with the Sheriff's Department has now gone away where they don't have their helicopters anymore. So there's no helicopters out for the community for Hamilton County, and drones have really taken the place of that. And there's a lot of other things we can do with the drone that we can't do with the helicopter. So we'll hit on that a little bit on the drone program. And then the Star Chase system. This is kind of a unique system that Sergeant Mullins kind of headed up with us. Really, what we were looking at as a department, when we got these license plate readers throughout the community, we knew that it was going to give us a lot of intel. It was going to tell us a lot where a lot of wanted people are, where a lot of stolen cars are, where a lot of criminal element are going to be in our community. And one of the big topics that we struggle with in policing today is police pursuits, the dangers of those pursuits, not just to the officers, but to innocent people that are near those pursuits. So this Star Chase system is kind of like a GPS system that's going to help us, and Sergeant Mullins will talk about that, on how that can help us with eliminating or preventing those pursuits to be longer distance to reduce that liability of harm to everybody involved. So those are really the 5 things we're going to talk about. But before I turn it over to Chris Niehaus, please, as we're talking, if you have questions about it, just ask the questions. That's what this is about. You know, if you've got something that you want to know, we can do that. We want to try to keep this within our timeline of about 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So if there's questions that you want to get with us individually afterwards, we'll be more than happy to do that. But yeah, but make sure that if there's something that he's explaining or any of these guys are explaining, talking about, just raise your hand. And that's really good for us, because that gives us an idea of what the community is really concerned about, what they're thinking about, and the direction and the style of we're going to go into policing. So. Any questions for me before we turn it over to Captain Niehaus? All right, Chris.
Awesome. Well, good evening. First, let me say thank you to each and every one of you for taking your time out of your evening to come here tonight. We truly enjoy meeting each one of you, talking to you, and explaining these new programs that we're doing and how we're trying to leverage technology to increase our efficiency within the organization. And I think you'll hopefully kind of see that tonight. Talking about body cameras, that program has developed over the last 6-7 years within our organization. I know there's a lot of people in this room that were there initially back in the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, when we started looking at body cameras. Body cameras were a really hot button topic then for law enforcement. So we started looking at them as an organization as, is this a tool that we need, and is it something that we need at this time? And we looked at a whole bunch of different factors, and a lot of those factors involved, of course, the most important thing, the budget and the funding for them. How do we pay for them? How do we pay to sustain them over a long period of time? What do our policies have to look like? How is it going to change our job as we know it as law enforcement? And how are we going to have to adjust for that? What kind of challenges are we going to experience? And then really, what is the public going to think about this? Because as it is pushed, and as it was pushed as a tool initially, especially back in that 2016, 2017 period, I'm sure everybody knows it was pushed as increased transparency with police, increased police accountability. It was really, really pushed and marketed to law enforcement agencies as this is going to drive down your use of force numbers. This is going to drive down your complaints on your officers within your organization. Well, it didn't take us very long to really kind of understand that those two factors that were the major impetus for a lot of agencies going to these cameras, for your uses of force and your officer's complaint to drive them down, we didn't have that issue within our organization. And a real quick snapshot of that, back in 2017, we were averaging about 27,000 calls for service a year, calls that we respond to. And then we look at an additional 7,000 traffic stops that we make. So we look at how many times do we come encounter with somebody in the public. Whether that's when we're responding to your house or to meet you, to help you because you were a victim of a crime or because it's a traffic stop. How many encounters do we have? So when we look at it, we were just over 40,000 contacts with community members. Well, out of that 40,000 contacts that we had with community members, in 2017 we had 1 complaint against an officer. Well, let's look at the use of force statistics. When we look at uses of force, we had 20 uses of force out of 40,000 interactions with people in our community. When you start looking at those percentages, you know, that's less than 0.1%, right? So for us, looking at solely from the perspective of lowering officer complaints and lowering uses of force, it wasn't there for us. And then coupled with, we've been a nationally accredited law enforcement agency through CALEA for over 20 years. And we started looking at other accredited agencies across the country who hold themselves to the highest law enforcement standards that we do. And they were looking at it through the same microscope and through the same lens, and they had the same feelings as we did. So we took it a step further, and I know some of you in this room were part of those discussions, but we had community meetings just like this. And then we went to community meetings out in the community, to neighborhood associations and the churches, and we talked about these body cameras, and we flat out and simply asked the community, do you think this is something that we as a law enforcement agency need? And I think resoundingly at the end of it, it was very clear that we didn't at that time, and that need wasn't there. So I think one of the things that we did from 2017 on is we continually looked at this annually. Where are we at? Every year for the past 6 years, we had discussions with community members, we had discussions with our elected officials and our township administration, and with our supervisory staff. Are we there, and is that need there yet? And it really wasn't. There was a lot more negative, and a lot more cons than there was pros for the organization to go to them. And quite honestly, a lot of those cons that we saw right off the bat were the whole body camera thing was very new to law enforcement, and there was a lot of things that had to still be figured out, especially from the legal perspective. What is a public record, and what do we have to give out on those body camera recordings? What can we withhold and not give to the public on those requests? You know, because if you're having a dispute in your home with your significant other, your wife, or your child, and the police, and we're in your home and we're recording that, do you want your neighbors to come to the police department and say, hey, I want a video, I want to see the video of what happened in their house? And I think everybody in this room, the answer is probably no, because that occurred within the privacy of our home. So there was a lot of discussions, and we knew internally that there had to be a lot of work to come through, whether it was through the courts or through legislation on how to address privacy. So that was one perspective that we looked at. And most importantly, then we also looked at how do we pay for these things, these cameras, if we look at moving to them. And then how do we manage them? Do we have to hire more staff on to help us manage these cameras? So there was a lot of those issues that we felt really just, they weren't answered yet, and we didn't want to start down this road without having some of those answers. And at the end of the day, the community was still telling us we don't think you need them yet. We internally, with our supervisory staff, we talked, and I think one of the things that we initially talked about was when we start to see an impact with the effectiveness of our organization, we start to see an impact on how effective we are solving crimes in the community. If those start to become impacted because we don't have body cameras, I think first that's a big consideration for us. So over the course of the past 6 years, we annually evaluate it. I really feel that the last couple of years we're getting closer and closer. Simply because a lot of those answers to those questions that we just talked about, they were being answered through legislation, answered through policy. Enough law enforcement agencies were out there that had these and deployed them out there, and they were the ones that were really kind of setting the course for everybody else. We kind of fast forward into 2022 last year. One of the things, and the very first thing we looked at when we did this annual review of, are we at that point yet where we need to go to body cameras? A lot of that discussion initially started with our line officers. And speaking to our line officers, they either came to Springfield Township from another local jurisdiction that had body cameras, or enough organizations around Springfield Township have body cameras, and our officers were to the point where first they were very comfortable working in that environment. They were very comfortable working with officers that had cameras. I think it kind of removed some of that anxiety that officers initially had about having body cameras. And then the second thing that we looked at is our prosecution and our effectiveness as an organization becoming effective. And unfortunately, what we found out in 2022 is it was. And it started to become effective because the court system has now relied so heavily on body camera footage and body camera evidence to prosecute and defend cases that it put us in a position where we weren't losing cases. Our cases weren't getting dismissed because we didn't have it, but what we found out is our cases we were going through more motions in court hearings than we ever used to have to, simply because we didn't have body camera video. And so many agencies did, and the courts become so reliant upon that video that, I hate to say it, but sometimes they look at it and say, well, can we trust the officer and what they're telling us because it's not on video? So I think that was kind of the aha moment for us, that our officers are comfortable with it, our officers want them, and I think we can start to see a negative impact on how efficient we are as an organization. So we had a lot of discussions among this command and supervisory staff, and the decision was made to look at applying for funding. So the federal government and the state of Ohio both put out grants for body cameras. for local communities to apply for body cameras. So we applied for the state body camera grant in September of 2022. So one of the things, trying to be fiscally responsible, we asked for one body camera for every one of our officers. We asked for unlimited storage of the data, because that data that storage is immense. Those recordings take up a lot of space. So we asked for unlimited storage, and we asked for all the equipment that comes with body cameras and be able to implement a body camera program successfully. And we asked the state of Ohio to pay for it. I think it was just our lucky day, but in February 2022, the state of Ohio awarded us one of the highest body-worn camera grants in the state of Ohio. We were awarded just under $245,000. So that funded body cameras for each one of our officers. It funded unlimited data storage for our organization for a 5-year period, as well as all the warranties and all the equipment. So I think looking at it from a financially responsible perspective, waiting as long as we did, let a lot of the legal issues work themselves out in court, seeing what worked for agencies and what didn't, and then being able to put together a program that will be sustainable in the future. It's funded initially for the first 5 years by the state of Ohio, and we have good policy to write based on those experiences of the agencies that started into this early on. I feel that we're in a really good position. So what we decided to do we went with the Axon body cameras. The Axon is one of the largest. They were formerly Taser Corporation. Taser is now Axon. We do have their Taser devices as one of our less lethal options that our officers carry. But it is one of the best on the market. And when we looked at what vendor we wanted to go with, we wanted to make sure that the equipment and quality that we were getting were there, that we were going to put forth the effort, the money, and the drive to make this program successful. We decided to go with the Axon Body 3s. So with this grant, we actually, on year number 3, we'll all get new cameras in year number 3 through the grant, we'll all upgrade to the newest cameras that are there. So lastly, I think the other part of this too is we have an ability now to share information with other agencies, our case information with the prosecutor's office, with local agencies. We can send them those digital files in a link. We share it with the prosecutor's office. We share it with local agencies that have similar crimes. It also gives us one other avenue to kind of reach out to the community, leveraging technology once again, because everybody that we encounter, we speak with on the street has a cell phone, right? Has a smartphone. Their whole life is controlled by the cell phone that they have. What we find is we talk to people on the street and they say, oh, I got a picture or video of that. Can I download it or email it to you? How can I get this to you? Well, the officers with the Axon software can send them a link. It goes right to their phone. They can drag and drop it from their phone, from their email, and it goes right electronically into the case file at the police department. It moves it over electronically. It's an easier way for us to send that out, and it's an easier way for us to be able to send things out so you can send it back anonymously to us to help in our investigations. So it gives us another outreach tool to the community where we can get some of those things back that were initially a struggle for us. I know that's we went down a long road, but we've been working on this since 2016, 2017. Does anybody have any questions?
Does the data reside on the camera until it's downloaded, or is it?
It does.
Okay.
So the question was, does the data reside on a camera until it's downloaded? And the answer to that is yes. These cameras will hold over 12 hours worth of data, depending on how busy the officer is on that day. When they come back into the police department, very simply, all they do is they take the camera off and they put it in the docking station. As soon as they put it into the docking station, it automatically uploads it into the secure cloud and it saves it, and then it clears it for that day. Yes?
Are the cameras already deployed and out there, or is that coming?
Good question. So the question was, are the cameras already out there and deployed? They are not yet. We are really close. There's a couple things that we looked at. And once again, it's another step in the day for the officers, right? Taking their reports, they have to enter the reports on the computer. They have to have a way to be able to catalog these videos. Trying not to cut into the day where the officers have the time to be out in the community addressing traffic complaints or being visible in the community. We're working on a system right now through our communication center, through our records management provider, that when our officers get dispatched to a call, once they clear that call and they shut that camera off, it'll automatically tag that video with that call for service number and then catalog it. So the officers don't have to spend extra time out of their day going through and figuring out which video is which. It does it for themselves. So it keeps that unobligated time open for the officers to be out and be visible. So great question. So we hope to, within the next month or so, have that pilot up and running with maybe 4 to 8 cameras out there, just to make sure that we're comfortable with it. We don't have to do any refining of policy and things like that. Yes, ma'am.
How long do you have to keep the data? And has the increase in violent crime over the last 2 years since the pandemic led to some of this too, to help have video of what's going on in the area when you're doing the follow-ups and you get called to a crime scene and you see the video of the crowds and everything?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. So there's really 2 components to that. The first part is, how long do we have to keep the video? And the second is it beneficial, or we've found it beneficial of violent crime? And the answer to that is yes. But the first part is, we have a records retention policy at Springfield Township. Now, those videos comply with that records retention policy based on whatever that video was taken. Okay, so for instance, if I go to Ed's house and I arrest Ed for a misdemeanor crime, that video follows the rules of evidence and the retention it is for any evidence that I take out of that crime. If he has a weapon on him and I take that weapon, I have to hold that weapon as evidence for a period of time. Well, that video evidence has to stay as long as that does. If I'm out on the street and I stop Mrs. Hester for doing 75 miles an hour down Wind Road, and I don't give her a citation, I give her a warning, we can delete those videos within a 30-day period. They can go away. So the basic answer to your question, they follow the rules of evidence for whatever that video is taking. The last part of your question, yes, we have found them very, very beneficial. Unfortunately, we've had some violent crime in the township where we used body camera video from adjoining agencies that showed up to help us on a scene, and we were able to grab their body camera video right away and start identifying people that were there that had left prior to us arriving. So big, huge benefit on the investigative side for that. Yes, ma'am.
So do the cameras have to be activated anytime there's contact, or are there situational times when the camera is activated?
It is situational.
Okay.
And I think that was a really big question that we had going back to 2016 and 17 is, when do they really have to be turned on? Any call for service that our officers respond to, whether it's an auto accident, domestic violence call, a burglary, you name it, they have to have that body camera on. There is some discretion. If I walk into Kroger's and I see you in Kroger's and I say, hey, did you enjoy that community meeting the other night? And we have just a very informal conversation, friendly conversation, I'm not comfortable recording that, and I don't think you probably would be comfortable with me recording that either. I think now, if it turned adversarial for whatever reason, yes, we would require officers. You need to turn that body camera on. So I think those are things that through the pilot program that we're going to implement, we're going to learn and be able to kind of tweak. Yes, sir.
Are you using any dash cams this time?
We do not have dash cams right now. We believe that the body camera gives us a lot more versatility. Instead of just having one fixed image out of your car from the dashboard, now you have video footage of things that occur from out around inside the car, inside a residence, and those things. So we think we have a lot more versatility with the body cameras than the dash cameras. Yes, ma'am.
I understand you have to carry like 10 to 20 pounds worth of stuff. How much does this add to that?
It's very, very light. I think we're talking a little less than a pound and a half. You can feel it. So it's not horrible. But you're right, everything seems to be getting heavier. Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna wonder, is there any way to quantify savings that come from hearings that don't exist because of the cameras? You know, the falling down drunk who, when he sees himself, doesn't go to trial.
Yep.
the defendant who claims he wasn't Mirandized when he hears it being given to him doesn't challenge it, those kinds of things.
Sure, and I think that, to your point, those are very, very hard to quantify. And I think those are things that we don't know, and we probably would never know. I really didn't address it initially when we talked about where we came from with this program, but here's what I will say. I think these body cameras, and I think in what we've seen across the country over the past several years with the body cameras, it changes the way the community acts. It changes the way the people that we have interactions with, it changes the way they act when they know that they're being recorded on body camera. And our officers have seen that with neighboring agencies and agencies that they work with. I'm a lot less likely to be vocal and mouthy and disrespectful to law enforcement if I know that I'm being recorded. But to your point, there's a lot of those scenarios that we just never know. Yes, sir.
Talked about the cameras, you turn them on and turn them off.
Yes.
If you're in a chaotic situation, how do you remember to do that?
So it's a very good question. And a lot of that is through our training process. Here's what I will tell you without going too deep into how the cameras work. There is a 30-second rollback. So technically they're always recording. It's not audio. So if something happens really quickly with the officer, unexpected, where he wouldn't have normally been recording, as soon as he can hit that button to start the recording, and by hitting it, it's a big circle on the front here. You can almost grab it anywhere and turn it on. You will get the previous 30 seconds, you just won't get the audio with it. So at least you'll have that video with it. So it's a 30-second rollback on each video. But that was a really good question.
So traffic stops.
Yes.
Would you turn it on?
Yes.
For a traffic stop?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, my question is just to piggyback on what the young lady said back there. I know a lot of police departments in different parts of the country. Once they hit their blue lights or the red lights comes on, the body camera automatically turns itself on. And I think that should be an added feature to that, where the police officer really don't have the control over turning it on and turning it off, because there have been situations where the body camera has been turned off by the officer when he's been in pursuit. So are you guys thinking about something with an upgrade? Once you hit those lights, you know, the body camera automatically starts recording?
Sure. Mr. McCoy, that's a really good question. And I will say this. Yes, we have. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there was a point I forgot to make. So I will tell you, the city of Cincinnati has that feature. It's an extra purchase, and it's wired into your police cruiser. Our question became for Axon, if our officers are sitting on North Bend Road conducting traffic enforcement, or they're there taking a report, and they don't need to have their body camera active, and a Cincinnati police car goes past them lights and siren too, and it's in the city, he said it's going to turn every one of your body cameras on. So I think that was a concern for us. How do we manage a lot of those false activations? I think technology will be there before too long where it can fix that. But to your point, what I did forget to mention is we did purchase what's called a signal sidearm kit with these body cameras. It's an attachment that goes on the front of our holster, or I'm sorry, the side of our holster. And anytime the officer draws his firearm out, it automatically kicks his camera on. And not only his camera, but any of the officers around him, it'll automatically turn their cameras on and start recording. When you look at, I'm sorry.
Is there a distance limitation on that?
There is, but I think it's like 50 feet. So it's a pretty great distance. Our concern with that is when our officers get into a lethal force encounter, sometimes the last thing that they're concerned about is trying to turn a body camera on because of what they're presented with or the threat they're presented with. By having that attachment on the holster, as soon as they would draw the holster out of their, or draw the firearm out of their holster, it automatically kicks everybody's cameras on, so we don't miss that.
Is that just
So-
for the firearm holster, or would it be for a taser or a nightstick as well?
Right now, it's just for the firearm. Yes.
There are options for the taser. We don't possess those tasers yet. It's the newest version that Taser came out with, and that is something that we are looking at going forward, but our current tasers that we have right now don't have the ability to activate that when they come out of the holster.
Yep. Any other questions?
Well, excellent. Thank you very much.
Who's up next?
I think Lieutenant Wilcher would be
Lieutenant Wilcher.
next up.
Evening, everybody. Thanks for being here again. My name is Matt Wilcher. I'm a lieutenant here at the police department. We're going to talk to you about the license plate readers, also known as what we call flock cameras. If you guys have not been out and about throughout the township and noticed these, then you're just not paying attention because they're everywhere right now. So a little backstory kind of on this, just to let you know. Like the chief was saying earlier, our license plate readers have been with us for a while. We've had them on our cruisers. So they actually, if you ever see some of our cruisers, they have these nice little big cameras on the light bars. They are on the front and the back. And they actually pick up license plates, and they have the ability to tell us if there's a stolen car, warrants, missing people, things of that nature. So we kind of piggybacked off that a little bit to kind of go a little bit further, because all those things help with protecting the community. That's the main focus of what we're trying to do with these, and we've set those up. Currently, right now, we will have 35. We're still in the process of setting some of those up, but 35 cameras throughout Springfield Township. That seems like a lot, and it is a lot, and we cover a pretty good area with these cameras and going through this. So just to kind of give you guys a little bit of information about how these particular ones work, so I won't really get too far into the weeds with it, but these are run off solar power, okay? So if you look, you see this little thing right up here on the top. That's a solar power thing for them to be able to get the camera's power. So when we kind of went through this, we talked about options for electric and everything else, but I think the solar powers are the ones that are going to work. We have the opportunity to do some electric through some of our bigger intersections with Winton and Galbraith, Winton and Compton. We're still working on that. But again, we're not all the way up to full capacity with the 35 cameras yet. But if you have looked around, you saw them, you will see that, again, when these things are out there, they stick out pretty good. Most people notice them. I will tell you that, again, the main focus will be on us being able to help the communities, for us to solve crimes, to find individuals that have warrants, to find missing individuals, stolen vehicles, which unfortunately there's a lot of those out there right now. We take this into consideration with all of our investigations, and that helps tremendously throughout anything that we have going on. If you guys call and say, hey, we had somebody stole something from my mailbox, a porch pirate, anything like that, with these cameras out there, if somebody gives us a description of a vehicle, we have the opportunity to go in and search any of these cameras, not just in Springfield Township, but throughout the community, throughout the state, and throughout the country, to see if we can find something that might match. Maybe you just give us a license plate that has a couple letters, a couple numbers. We have the ability to go back and look to see, hey, here's a gray SUV. I might have a couple letters and numbers. We have the ability to go back and find those things to see if we can find out who might have been involved in doing this. That's the main focus, I think, what these are. I think a lot of people also worry that we put these up and they're a big brother aspect of it. It's 1,000% us trying to do whatever we can to make the community safer, and it adds that extra added layer of security. Again, I don't want to get too technical with some of the stuff, but our officers have the ability to see these in their cars. So they log on for the day, they get in there, they type in some stuff, log in, they get this flock system up and running. They have it set up to where they'll actually be able to get reads or get alerts telling them that there's a stolen car that just passed one of these cameras, that there's a subject with a warrant that's with these missing cameras, that there's a vehicle of interest that was involved in a hit skip that we're able to manually put in and show this is where this car potentially is. That being said, there's always going to be something that's going to be interesting for us to be able to go from an investigative standpoint. When you think about the community as a whole, what Springfield Township has, I will tell you that Forest Park, Fairfield, they have a bunch around here as well. Cincinnati does not have them as of yet, but we have those communities that are surrounding us, Springdale, they're getting them, and it's going to be nothing but beneficial for all of us. I'll give you kind of a little example of how this kind of worked to our benefit not too long ago, but we had an unfortunate situation up on Meredith where an individual was shot and killed. With the help of the flock cameras, they were able to determine that the individual left in a certain vehicle, and they're able to go in there and put that vehicle description in there, and they were able to locate on the cameras that we had on Meredith a specific vehicle that fit that description. They were able to get a license plate, and they were able to do some investigating that actually helped locate that vehicle, and we were able to find it all the way down in Tennessee. So again, these cameras are pretty much everywhere. If you see them up and running, you will notice that they have these big boxes on top for the solar. I'll show you a little bit how this kind of works with what our officers see, what our dispatcher can see, what we see when we're sitting at our desk. It has the opportunity for us to see those alerts and kind of go that route. It'll probably open up some questions, and I might be able to answer a few other things if Captain Peterson can bring it up here real quick. So again, this is what we see when our officers log on. They have the ability to see some of these alerts that pop up. And if you look at this right here, it just says this is a Forest Park camera. So we can look at Forest Park's cameras, we can look at our cameras, we can look at Fairfield's, anybody that's throughout basically the entire country that gives us access. But as you can see on this basically is telling us that this vehicle has a warrant on it. So what our officers would do at this point, if they see that there's a warrant attached to a vehicle or it comes up, they need to run that license plate. They need to see if they can run this license plate. I know that picture's kind of not clear, but it tells you up here, it gives you the plate. If they run that plate and they see there's a warrant attached to it, there's probable cause for them to be able to stop that vehicle to get the individual that has a warrant. Sometimes these warrants could be as minor as traffic infractions, but a lot of times they're actually a heck of a lot bigger than just that. We just had one not too long ago where officers noticed the same car hitting the same cameras over by St. Xavier, and they kept seeing that. Well, one of our officers actually ran the plate, saw that they had a pretty serious felony warrant, and they kind of waited because it kept hitting that in the same time period every day. They waited. Sure enough, they see the vehicle, it hits the cameras, they run it to check it, arrested. So again, little things like that, those are extra added features I think that you guys maybe not see 100% all the time, but when you see these cameras, this is what we're kind of using them for to help us solve crimes and keep you guys safe throughout the community. One of the things, if you look at, hit that map on there. This will kind of give you an indication just throughout the area of how many agencies have them. Sharonville, Evendale, Forest Park, Fairfield. And as you kind of look around, you see this just big area. You got Mount Healthy, North College Hill. So they're pretty much everywhere. So not only does it encompass, they are at Edgemont. Believe it or not, they are actually in Edgemont. I promise you they are. So Summit section, they're out there. They're over. There's 3 of them over there. I promise you. Not getting too much into it, but there's a political side of this as well, where we tried to make sure that we were putting them in areas that people understood this is going to benefit the neighborhoods. And again, putting them in specific spots throughout Springfield Township, it helps encompass and enclose those neighborhoods. So if a car gets in there that's done something they shouldn't have, whether it's a theft, whether it's, God forbid, a homicide, we have the ability to be able to say that car passed this camera and then it didn't pass another camera. We'll be able to get in that neighborhood and say, wait a minute, they didn't pass this camera, so they still have to be here somewhere. But again, this map kind of gives you an indication. As you can see, this talks about the alerts. If you click on that alert, on that actual one, it'll show you the actual camera. So, whoop, let me do another one. So this is what our officers can see. Click it again. There you go. So as you can see, this one specifically hit over here. This is going to tell you the camera. It's going to zoom in, give you a better location. So you're probably somebody's going to ask me, how long does it take for us to get that alert once it passed the camera? Could depend on a few things, but Flock has pretty much told us that anywhere from 10 seconds to 25 to 30 seconds is about the time period. For us to get alerts, our officers, like I said, they log onto their computers in their car. They have this running. There's a nice little noise that starts making them aware of that there's a hit or some type of warrant. They get it on there. One of the other features they have is the ability for us to get that notification on our cell phones. Like we said, everybody has a cell phone. Everything runs through your cell phone. So our dispatchers have access to that. Our detectives watch this all the time. So again, these little nuances that we have throughout the communities that are nothing but technology driven for us to be able to do our jobs more efficiently and be better in the long run. So I'll open it up to some questions.
That first view that you had on the camera,
Sure.
that looked like it was one direction. Do you actually?
So that was a specific camera. So
Okay.
when we get an alert, so if we bring back up the alerts, when we get an alert, it'll show a picture of the car. It tells you the camera location, tells you the direction it's going. So again, this says Mill and Kemper. But if you look down a little bit, I mean, it just depends on where these cars are coming through. But it does have the direction. And if you think about it now, unfortunately, we don't have 2 plates anymore. If we had 2 plates, that would be great. It'd make things a lot easier. But since we only have rear plates, we can only get those rear plates. It will pick up motion, so if a car is going in opposite direction, it'll pick up that car going past there, it just might not get the plate. So we have the ability to search, again, for cars, not based on plate, but based on descriptions. So if you kind of look, let me scroll down on this a little bit just to see if there's, sometimes these will have actual, yeah, so look right here, so there you go, look at that, summit and section. So this comes back and this says it's a stolen vehicle. But if you look, it gives a description. It says it's a blue Kia, and that's what we're looking for. So summit section, here's a plate. We ran that. If we run that, we'll be able to see that that vehicle was stolen. And that kind of incorporates us into some other technology that Sergeant Mullins will talk about a little bit later, especially when it comes to stolen vehicles. So, but yeah, we get that. Shows a picture of the car so we know what we're looking for. It gives a picture of the plate. You try to match those up to see if those two are together, and then we try to do what we got to do. Yes, ma'am.
What are the plates in the back window? You know,
So
people
again,
will stick
it's
them up
tough.
there. Will
It is tough. So with Flock has probably come a long way, and it's still, I would still say it's a relatively new technology, and they're developing continually as we go. As a matter of fact, there's other technology they're using that they have out there that we're looking at as other features to help us with our investigative side of things. But it just depends on where that plate is. They're kind of set up to get it the best possible location. So if it's in the back window, we're not going to get it. We might get a picture of the car, but we're not going to get the plate, unfortunately.
I'm always suspicious of people
Sure.
who keep their tags,
Just know I know you had one too.
especially when they expire.
My first question, in thinking of Elmwood Place, does this do anything with speed?
No, so it does not do anything speed related. It's not going to tell us the speed. It's not going to tell us, anything other than, hey, here's a car. It read the plate. We have a warrant. We have a missing person. And it's stolen. Things of that nature. So, next one, yes, sir.
I went to a presentation, I guess if it's for law enforcement, it'd be great. But my understanding is it's a service to where I could join that service and see that data too.
You could. I'm glad you asked that. So definitely, it is something that the private sector can get involved in as well. So it's not just a law enforcement-based system. So I will tell you that in Mount Healthy, Compton Groves, and the Hilltop Plaza, which are private entities, they purchase those cameras as well, and we have access to those, so we can see what's going on through there. So Mount Healthy has their law enforcement cameras, and then we have the private cameras that are available for us to look at. So that's something that's kind of taking off a little bit, and it's things that we probably talked about. I know we have some people from Central Park here that's been talked about as one of a possibility. The hospital, the new medical facility that's over there in Galbraith, it's something that they've looked at as well to kind of go in that direction. So, yes, sir.
Do the officers, let me reword that, are the officers able to use these cameras to speed up data entry on accident reports?
Probably, I mean, it depends on where those cameras are. It's not going to do a live video feed, so it only takes a picture. So there's no live video feed, so it's not going to be able to help 100%. Unless we're talking about hit skips, then that might be able to help us solve that hit skip in the long run. So
I just was hoping that, when I have an accident, that they'll get, if the camera can put the data into their system, get me out of there.
I was going to say, no, it's not going to help you with that. I wish I could get you out of there quicker. That's more, that might be a little bit more on us than anything else. So, yes, sir.
My question is, with these cameras, are they actually recording the video, and how long do they store the video that they record, if they do store that video? And the second question is, how many other communities is Springfield Township tied to? Is it Coleraine, Mount Healthy, Shamville, that sort of thing?
Sure.
So those are the two questions. The reason that I asked these two questions is, I was supposed to pick up a car yesterday, and the car got stolen. Before I picked it up, so I was just wondering on the storage of the video. So does it store video, and how long?
So it does store the video. So Flock guarantees, or at least they guarantee, that the video will be present, the pictures, not the video, the pictures of these cars will be present for 30 days. That's their policy, that's the way it is. And if you can imagine, I can't tell you how many cameras there are throughout the entire country, but they would need a very, very large server system in order to be able to have all that. So 30 days is still a pretty long time considering. But for us, when we talk about, especially when you're talking about body cams or crimes or anything like that, we have the ability to download this information. So we can download, save the information, whatever's in there, we have the ability to pull that out of there and save it. So that'll stay with us for the crime, and we retain that as long as it needs to be retained. As far as if there's a crime that happens today, and on day 31, I'm not really sure we're going to get what you want out of that. So that's the answer to the first part. As far as the second part, there are a lot. Like I said, I will show you a little bit here again just to kind of give you, I was going to say, we have access to cameras. We have to ask permission from each other, from each department. So if the department asks us for access, we have to grant them access, vice versa. We ask for access, they grant us access. So I will tell you that specifically, you can look throughout here. This is a lot. This is just Ohio on that left-hand side. But around here, you got Mount Healthy, North College Hill, Forest Park, Fairfield, Springdale, Sharonville. Those are the biggest areas, right, especially close to us right now, that have them. You go further east, the Sheriff's Department has them. Madeira has them. So there's plenty of other agencies that are jumping on and getting into this right now. So again, if wherever the car was stolen, there's a good chance that maybe somewhere one of these cameras probably caught this or at least saw that car somewhere. So if you know the plate, we could always search that, and that's something that we have the ability to do. If somebody tells us the plate, we can search it. We can look for all the cameras throughout the entire country that we have access, that have shared access with us, and we might get lucky enough to be able to find that.
So in other words, if a person is driving a stolen car or there's a warrant out on that car, so what do you do with people that don't have driver's license? Is it snitch and tell?
Just like anything else, if you don't have a driver's license, you're probably getting a ticket and your car's probably going to end up in our tow lot. So, but yeah, I mean, anybody that's driving these stolen cars or anything like that, and again, I don't want to get into too much what Sergeant Mullins will talk about, but we have the ability to do a few other things when it comes to basically trying to eliminate these traffic pursuits. So most of the time, these stolen cars, it's kids these days. I mean, we're talking 15 and younger on some of these cars that we're dealing with and what we're seeing out there. So I think the answer to that is most of these pictures take a picture of the back of the car. We might not be able to see who's driving the car until we actually get it stopped and find out who's in there. So yes, ma'am.
Why is the front plate no longer needed?
That was a state of Ohio thing. Again, there's probably some individuals that sit around and think of good ideas, and this is one of their ideas that they came up with. So I can imagine that none of us were in that room when they made that decision. So I can tell you police would love to have the front tag back. So yes, ma'am.
The cameras, do they have to detect a car, or does it take it every so many seconds?
Nope, it has to detect some type of motion, and usually that has a little bit to do with the size of what it's going through there. It will get motorcycles. It can get scooters. So if somebody's, I was going to say it has had pictures of animals. So I was going to say Flock has kind of told us that it just depends a little bit on the speed. It depends on a little bit on the size. That can be what sets it off. So daytime and nighttime have a little bit of effect, but obviously with nighttime pictures, it's more of an infrared thing. So for us to be able to see colors of cars, it's not as easy, but we get those license plate and that can help us. So yes, sir.
Does it take a picture of the person and their activity?
It only gets a picture, it registers that car based on the plate. However, if a car's coming the opposite direction and it sees that and it gets that motion and takes a picture of it, potentially we could see a picture of the individual through that windshield. But again, it's not set up specifically just to take pictures of individuals. It's more for that plate and that car itself. Yes, sir.
Spring and summer, lots of solar energy. Fall and winter, not so much. Is there enough solar energy in December for them to work as well or not?
Well, you've just asked the question that we sat around and talked about for probably 2 or 3 months about how we wanted to do this. So in dealing with the project itself, one of the big things were how do we make sure that this power goes to these cameras throughout the year. You're right. The seasons play a big factor in that. We looked at the electric side of things as being a big factor, but in watching this over the last few months that we've had them, because we kind of got this going in April, and then we really just had most of the cameras have been installed since about June. So with the exception of about 6 or 7 cameras we got left to get installed. The solar stuff, I will tell you, it shows its percentage. Flock gets an alert if it goes below a certain percentage to be able to come out to look to see what the issues are. So far, we dealt with people in northern Ohio. We've talked to them about the solar side of things. Flock is continually developing that technology to make sure that the solar side of it works better. We haven't seen that issue. We haven't seen any issues with solar being a problem. When I check this, you can see that. So again, if we have 2 or 3 days where the sun's just not out because it's cloudy all the time, we haven't experienced that yet. So I can't really give you a good answer on Whether or not that's going to be a factor for us, although it's something we considered, and based on the things that we did research on, it sure looks like they got a pretty good grasp on some of those issues when it comes to the solar power. So, yes, sir.
Does snow accumulation impact that?
So again, I would like to think that based on how it's tilted, it might not do that, but there is a heating element that I believe that it will kind of keep that kind of from getting iced over or anything else, but there is a chance that that could potentially happen. And if it does happen, like I said, we have the ability to see it. Flock also has the ability to see it. If they notice that, or if we notice it, we can actually go out and maybe try to do some things to try and get that back activated again. So, yes, ma'am.
This is a usage question. If you're on a street that has a lot of red light runners, and you've got a camera there, can you go after those red light runners, even though it's not the red light camera, you're seeing them constantly going through, and in some way you can tell that the light is now red. If it's at the right angle, can you go after them after the fact?
Unfortunately, I think the way their cameras are set up, they're not going to see that. That's going to be something an individual officer has to witness. However, if they witness it and they see that car going through the intersection where we might have a camera, they can say, hey, instead of having to pull out and go 90 miles an hour after it, they might be able to use that information to say, all right, this is the car that ran the red light. They can get that tag. Maybe they can go to the house to see who it was, talk to them, see if there's an issue citations, things like that. So that's a possibility. Anything else? Good deal. Well, I appreciate it. I think we're going to move on to the next thing. So thank you for your time. Thank
All right, I'm up. So
You're up.
I get to come out from behind here. I'm Nick Peterson. I'm going to talk about the virtual reality training simulator. As the chief had mentioned earlier, this was something over the last 2 years that we have had and been playing around with, if you will, to figure out how it works into our system. One of the big things that we wanted to make sure that our officers knew when we got this was it's not a toy. And so I used the game play joking, or the word play jokingly. We saw that there was a need for some continuing education with regard to use of force, de-escalation, those types of things over the course of a long time. And what we've traditionally had was a very 2D system that you would stand in front of a screen. The officer would have a fake gun that had a laser in it, basically. They would talk to a screen and try to interact with players, role players on a screen, and then make decisions based on that. At the time that technology came out, it was effective. You were able to get something good out of it. As time has gone on, virtual reality and augmented reality is now very much in our world. It is everywhere. Kids have these things in their homes now, which when I was young, when we were all young, you never would have thought something like that would happen. But so they've taken the video game virtual reality type idea and moved it into the training world. And so for law enforcement training, even medical training, this has become very big. So a couple years ago, we started looking at this. We were in a consortium that had a training simulator that we used, and started looking at the system, which is called Street Smarts Virtual Reality, SSVR. We did a couple of different trials with different ones, and we landed on Street Smarts mainly because of the versatility of the system. The officers, we can basically take a room, we could take this room and turn it into any number of hundreds of areas where an officer would have to do something. They would have to perform. They would have to make a traffic stop, do a building search, use force, talk their way out of using force. And so there are a lot of different things that we can do with this. This system, I'll play this. It's very hard to explain it to you, I think, without some video aid. So on the left side here, you'll see a video. I'm going to kind of narrate. This was one of our more recent trainings that we did. Lieutenant Wilcher helped with kind of putting this together. But this is a handful of dozens of ways that we are using this and can use this. So for the purposes of this, it looks like, and I'm just videoing this through the lens of the officer, but it looks like we're in a building inside of basically some cubicles and some other stuff. That's what the officer sees. they're walking through. Those blue lines tell you that you're getting close to the edge of the space that you have to work in. In reality, we're in our training room. So this is where we really were, was in that training room. Jumping back in the same training room now, we're on a traffic stop. I've paused the traffic stop in the middle, so you're not going to see any movement from our driver. You're not going to see any movement from the other officer that is our contact officer, but you can see that the officers are now in that traffic stop, in that world, that virtual world, where they can actually talk to people and react. And as a trainer, I can actually go in and make these people do certain things based on what the officer's saying. This is Officer Wilcher, less lethal force option, or Lieutenant Wilcher. He's going through this. Down below you can see what I see, and that's what he sees. So he's going through this trouble run. He's actually talking to this person. You can see in the background he's talking to them as though he's there. This guy's not going to comply with him, and in fact is going to try to do something to the lieutenant. He draws his taser out, and he's able to actually use the taser off of his belt. It's not his real taser. It's a simulated taser that comes with the system. So we have this ability to use the actual force options that we legitimately have in order to train with them and talk through them. Actual uses of force, this was an active shooter. Now he's going back and watching what he did from different angles. So we can talk about that and say, hey, maybe try to do it this way. Maybe you should have used this language, or you should have said this or that. We can actually jump into that world with him. We have the ability to use our rifles with this. So it just looks like he's walking around the room. In reality, this is what he's seeing and this is what he's doing. So he's actually making entry into a building where there's an active shooter, and he's trying to take care of that. Again, the rifle is an option. You also have a pistol option that comes with this. So it's the same scenario, moving through that and using his pistol to move through the space there and take care of the threat. It really is about, as you can use your imagination really with setting up some of these scenarios and going through them with the officers. The most recent update that came out allows us to actually create our own scenarios. So up until now, we had to use the scenarios that the company gave us. Now they give us basically a whole world that we can drop ourselves into. And as a trainer, I can actually put a headset on and be in the scenario with the officer and walk them through what they did when we did the replay there. I can actually stand there in the scenario and say, hey, over here, I'm pointing at the ground, but in reality, there's nothing there. In virtual reality, there's a gun sitting there, and say, hey, you missed this. You made this traffic stop, but you missed the gun that was sitting here. So let's talk back through this and figure that out. De-escalation techniques, this is a phenomenal system to be able to go through, and they have a lot of things in there that we can talk to people, and just through mental health and other things. We can just sit and have the officers get some experience with talking through things. Newer officers that are coming out of the academy, they may not have experienced all of these things that we want to teach them. We can jump in here with them and do that. This is not a replacement for firearms training. It does have a range simulator in it, but it's not a replacement for firearms training. It's not a replacement for any type of actual traffic stop training, which we do on a yearly basis. It is not a replacement for anything else that we do, simunition training, that type of stuff. This just enhances all of that. We're in a controlled environment. We can run this 24/7, 365. We can in fact have two officers in the same scenario talking to each other. I can jump in there with an officer and actually be the bad guy, if you will, or be that person that's having an emotional breakdown and talk through that stuff with them and be in that world. So it really takes our training and advances it to the point where it pretty much covers everything. We can go into this and run through some scenarios, then go down to Whitaker Elementary or another school and actually get officers in there in a real space and have them do simunition training, which is more of a live fire training that we go through. So we'll put them in those scenarios, put them into live simunition training with traffic stops. So It just enhances everything that we've done. And what we found is that we're getting a lot of good feedback from officers. They're saying that they not only appreciate the technology, but they're gaining a lot of insight from that. Your mind goes places, and later on, your body needs to recall where you've been, right? And so being able to put their mind in situations here and talk through the right way to do it from a training standpoint allows us to watch them later on and see them progress to the point where their body's going to do what their mind has told them to do in the past. So we get to those I guess, training steps through this.
Cool.
Any questions? Yes.
Nick, talk a little bit about the stress that they feel going through this.
Yeah, so when the officers put this headset on, it's uncanny because a lot of them in the past have gone through different scenarios, and there's a little bit of, they feel like they're going to have motion sickness or whatever else. This doesn't do that. They get inside of there, and you can immediately, when they start the scenario, you can actually see their physical change in their body, their stress in their voice. It's crazy. And we've had a few officers that have gone through a couple different traffic stops and other things where we've had the officer standing there, they're talking to the person, they're asking them to get out of the car, and all of a sudden the guy says no, slams the door, and takes off in the car. And you'll actually see, if you're not watching this screen, you'll see the officers jump back out of the way, turn and actually try and run back to their car. There's only so much space in these rooms that we have. So there's a safety aspect that we have built in where when you saw those blue squares, it tells you like, hey, you need to slow down and stop. You're getting close to the edge. But they get to the point where they are so into it that they are actually reacting based on what they're seeing in front of them. So jumping back away from that car, not reaching into it and trying to go into the car, that's a big one for us. Our officers, as a typical response, don't do that, wouldn't do that, but we can test them here and say, what would you do if you're in that position? A lot of us have been in that spot, so we can put them in there. The actual firearms portion of it, you'll see officers in the middle of talking to somebody in this system, and the bad guy or girl will pull a knife, will pull a gun, and they'll jump back and draw their gun out, and we're looking for them to do all of the right things here. Are you reacting appropriately? And they will. And they get done, and I'm telling you, some of them will come out, and 3 minutes in this machine with this VR on will get them to where they're sweating, and their heart rate's up, and their hands are shaking. And so that's that decompression period where we take the headset off.
Really there.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But in virtual reality.
You can put that headset back on, and then we'll go through it and debrief it. This is what you did right. This is what you can improve upon.
That's cool.
So it is incredible what you can get now, and they continue to get better and better. I mean, we've had it for just under 2 years. They've already rolled out so many updates that it's hard to keep up with. And the 2-officer system of being able to basically jump into the world with them is something that was newer for us earlier this year, and we're just now kind of getting a grasp on what we can do with it, how we can utilize that to our advantage.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yes, this virtual training, is it mandatory? And if so, how often? Is it every 6 months, once a year?
So we do at least quarterly training with different things, in different aspects. So we have firearms training that we do throughout the year, but aside from that, we do traffic stops, building searches, driver's training, a whole host of different types of trainings, and those are at a minimum quarterly is when we have those scheduled. We try to work this into as many of them as possible, and it is mandated. It's a part of their training day. They're being paid there to go to training, and so we'll do that. We also have times where we will see a need. Maybe not everybody needs to go through a certain type of training, but certain officers need to. We can utilize this to bring them in and do some directed training with them. If a sergeant or one of their peers sees something didn't quite go right with a call, and we want to bring them back and utilize this to put them back in that scenario, back in that situation, and talk through it with them, we'll do that. We also have times when we let officers just sign up, and we'll say, hey, it's not mandatory, but there is an extra training that you can go through that we'll give to you if you're interested in it. From a building search standpoint, or building clearing standpoint, this is phenomenal because you can create any number of different rooms and scenarios and situations in here, and we can walk those officers through that.
Can you take video of Whitaker and incorporate it into the graphics?
You cannot yet do that. However, you can recreate that within here. That's part of that scenario builder, yes. You can move some of the building rooms around. The goggles, I have a set of the goggles here. There is an option on these goggles to be able to press a button on the side and it will let you see through the goggles. That's something that we're still kind of messing around with. It's that continuation of what you would do afterwards. So Lieutenant Welcher fired upon this person who was shooting at other people in this room. He took care of that. If we continue this on, I could, in theory, put another trainer across the room in about the position that guy would be in, laying down on the ground, and have him press that button, and now he can see through you can actually see through the goggles without taking them off, and it kind of becomes an augmented reality. It's not virtual, but it's augmented, and that person's laying on the ground. Now he has to go over there and actually apply aid, do tourniquets, stop the bleeding, that type of stuff, to a live person that's laying there, and go through that. So we're getting into that part of it. We do that in firearms training, where we go through a lot of that aid after the fact. What do you do after you shoot? You need to do other things. It doesn't just end there. We're not at a range where we just put our gun away and we're done. There's a lot of things that go with that, and trying to take care of the person that you just had to use force against is one of those. So, yes, sir.
Does this system get shared with the fire department for learning dark and smoky buildings?
I would say we have not done that yet. I believe that the fire department does have certain apparatus that they are able to use, which actually does have smoke and things like that in it, that they use. So we've not experienced the need for that yet, but it may be something coming up where the technology would be there to kind of put them in those situations and do that.
That's pretty cool.
Any other questions? All right. So I'm going to stay up here. I'm going to knock out the next one as well. I'm going to talk about our drone program a little bit. So giving credit where it's due, Sergeant Mark Downs is actually the one who took this project on. As the chief mentioned earlier, the sheriff's office decided to do away with their helicopter, and when the pilot left, I believe they've already sold their helicopters. They're gone. We started looking at that resource and how much we use that on a regular basis, and wanted to start looking into our own drone program and having those available to us immediately. What we found over the last couple of years is agencies around us were getting we're getting drones in. There was a certain amount of time, kind of like the body cameras, where there was, the FAA had certain rules about flying them, when you could, when you couldn't, who could fly them, how you could fly them, how high you could fly them, where you could fly them, could you fly them over people. All of these things kind of had to be hashed out. We're at a point now where we have a pretty good understanding of where the FAA stands, what's legal, what you can and can't do. And so we have selected several officers to go through and actually get their FAA license to fly these. So there is a Part 107 test. It's not an easy test. It's a pilot's test that you have to take in order to be able to fly this. We decided to go ahead and go get the Skydio drones. A lot of people are familiar probably with the DJI. That's about the most common known drone out there for citizens. We looked at the DJI. We also looked at Skydio. What we found with Skydio is, for the specific purposes that we need, that was going to be our best bet. The program, or the actual drones that we purchased are up here. We purchased 2 of them. The bigger one here is the X2. That one has the ability to do FLIR or night vision. So we can fly that at night and actually see at nighttime. It also has a 3D mapping capability. So for serious auto accidents, fatal auto accidents, and or outdoor crime scenes, We can use this to actually take a 3D picture of that whole crime scene, and you can almost kind of like the VR system, you can kind of drop yourself into the middle of that crime scene or into the middle of that auto accident and be able to take a snapshot of everything all the way around. So that drone gives us the ability to do that, which is very nice. More so what we found when we were calling other agencies in, and the fire department actually has a drone or two, I think, and they were able to kind of let us test out some of the abilities of their drones when we were looking for wanted persons, when we were looking for missing persons, we were looking for missing children. All of these different things makes it so much easier for us to do our jobs. Somebody goes missing, and really within a couple minutes, we can have these up in the air and covering a massive amount of space, whereas on the ground with a canine or even just officers out there searching on foot, it would take us a lot longer to do that. In the past, we would call the sheriff's office and ask them for the helicopter, maybe 15 to 20 minute response time at times for them to get out, get it ready to go, get it in the air, and get it to where they are. With these, we would anticipate having these in the trunks of the cars on patrol during the day, and if the need's there, we would put it up. The real big part of this is that it's on an as-needed basis, right? We're not just going to fly these haphazardly or throughout the township just to fly them. The officers need to make sure and are going to make sure that those are only flown when there is a need. We do have a second smaller one that's over on the side here. That one has the ability to get into tighter spaces. So we've utilized that in some training aspects to get into crawl spaces, up into attics. The nice part of both of these drones that the DJI does not have, and one of the reasons that pushed us to this is, and I'm going to say this, but they are virtually uncrashable. Okay, I could take.
Sounds like a challenge.
So you say that. That's when they came and did the demo for us. They told us, please fly this, try and crash it, and we did. We tried. We couldn't crash it. We tried to. Yes, they're expensive, but he told us fly it at the police department, fly it at the building, and just fly it right into the building. So it's your money, not ours. Here we go. We put it full force as fast as it could go. It has sensors on the top, bottom, and the back of it, and it basically creates a 360-degree, it's a full bubble all around it. When it gets to a certain point, it stops itself. We couldn't crash it into the building. We tried crashing it into trees.
Real science fiction.
It wouldn't crash. So there are weather-related issues that can come with flying drones, right? So when I say it's virtually uncrashable, if you put it up in the middle of a hurricane, you're probably not going to fare too well.
Lightning storm.
Yeah, but under normal flying conditions in the areas that we would be flying and should be flying it, we shouldn't have any problems with that. Putting these things into tactical situations, like I said before, putting it into an attic. If I'm looking for somebody who's barricaded with a gun, instead of me going up into that attic, we can put that drone up there and see if somebody's up there. And if we see them, especially with having the FLIR capability and stuff, that's fine. We'll wait that out and we'll talk through it. So there are a lot of different applications that we've seen the need for it, and so this is one more thing that's going to keep our officers safer. I think it's going to help us with missing persons, missing kids, etc. So, yes, ma'am.
Are they pretty quiet?
If you've heard any normal sized drone, you can hear it when it's up. You'll be able to hear it. There's a little buzzing sound. It almost sounds like I don't know. It sounds like it's a very small motor on each of those wings, but it has a buzzing sound to it. So even 400 feet up, if it's over you, you're probably going to hear it.
I didn't
Yes.
know about the small one.
The small one, the same way. It's not quite as loud as the bigger one, but you'll still hear it.
Send it into an attic to see.
They're going to know that you're there, but chances are they know we're there anyway. Most of the time they know we're there, even when we're trying not to be heard.
But it's not going to wake us up in the middle of the night the way the helicopters did.
That is correct. You will not hear
What's
it.
the helicopter we hear, besides being the one from UC?
That's a good question. Right now, I don't know. The sheriff's helicopter's gone, so,
Well, that's what I heard,
Yeah.
but there was one in the area, and it wasn't from use, it wasn't the air.
it wasn't air care.
No.
Sir, do you have a question?
What's the range on that? Let's say if you stationary here, how far out could you radiate?
They can go a pretty far distance, like up to miles. But the FAA regulations and everything else, we have to have line of sight. We have to see it. So it's going to be within our line of sight is where we have to keep it for. And again, we've got officers that are going through that FAA process to get their license. I am not one of them, so I have not gone through that process to see exactly what the regulations are. But yes, it's not going to go very far. Yes, sir.
My question is, are these drones part of the state budget along with the body cams? Who's paying for these drones? Is it the state money coming in, or is it the taxpayers or the township? So how are they getting paid for it?
These drones that we have are paid for by the township.
By who?
By the township.
By the township?
Yes, sir.
Taxpayers.
Correct.
Even state's taxpayers paying for it.
It would be cheaper than a helicopter, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I would say. It definitely would be. Taking the place of that was a huge loss for us. When the sheriff said that they were not going to continue that program, we utilized that a lot for different things that happen in the township, robberies, people running from us. The big ones are missing persons, missing children, that type of thing. Those are huge. We have a need for it.
You know, the military's used theirs up in Wright Pat.
Yes.
Up in Fairborn and Beaver Creek on some things.
Do you just have those 2 drones, or do you have others, or are you gonna get
The police
more?
department just has these 2.
Okay. Is that all you intend to get?
Right now, it is. The program, when we purchase these, we do kind of like the body cams. There is an option in, I think in a year and a half, if they come out with a newer one, which they say they will this year actually, they will upgrade that for us.
Do you know if these brand have the signal identifier built into them, or are you exempt from that?
I don't know if they do or not. Unfortunately, I didn't go through that piece of it. Sergeant Downs did to know what that is. But I do know that yes, normal drones should have that on there. So I would assume that they would, but I think not 100% sure. Yes.
How are they monitored? Is there a screen in the cruisers, or does it come back to headquarters, or what?
The actual pilot has a handheld screen here that can also be digitally projected to a screen or a monitor. The other piece to this is we can project this over an internet-based connection to a screen that we can log into. So when we talk about even going back to like when we had the windstorm that came through, major damage throughout the township, we can use these to do damage assessment, and that can be relayed back to a command center. If we have a SWAT situation or something like that, where we can put this up, same thing, we can relay that back to a command center and actually get that feed out to somebody.
Is it just video monitoring, or is it audio as well?
Just video.
Does it go to Hamilton County's emergency?
I'm sorry.
Or can you send it to Hamilton County's emergency during like a tornado or something?
It can go to Command 400, which is the response unit that would come out for that, so yes. Yes, sir.
What's the battery life for a single flight? How long can it stay up?
20 to 30 minutes is typical for it, and then you'd have to replace the battery. It depends on the wind conditions and
That's not very
how far
long.
you're flying it and everything else.
Is this something you can use DEA sees monies, or however that works? Can you use that to buy more down the road?
That's possible. There is some equipment funding that's there that we could utilize, and the chief might be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Talking about the funding with this, the great thing that, Nick was talking about, the fire department has a drone, so we're kind of been working really well with the fire department. That a lot of the funding when we get this type of stuff, we use a lot of what we call forfeiture money through our investigations, through drugs and stuff like that. So when you say is the township paying for this to come out of the taxpayers' money, yes and no. I mean, there's a lot. We have Unfortunately, we do have drug issues in Springfield Township and Hamilton County, but that's a source of revenue too on the seizures of property and cash and stuff like that. So our forfeitures, we work with, a lot of different drug agencies. We're the administrative agency of DART, the Drug Abuse Reduction Task Force. So we've got our hands in the investigations of drugs. So that, a lot of these, when we have these extra things that kind of come outside of our budget, once we get that funding up to where we feel comfortable where we can purchase some of this, a lot of this comes from our drug seizure money or our state seizure money or even our federal seizure money that we get. We're working with the DEA. So yeah, we're really cognizant of the fact that, okay, if we're going to spend the money, making sure that we're doing it the right way with combining with the fire department, making it more of a township drone team. Because like Nick said, when we have these big critical incidents, whether it's a windstorm like that, we're all going to be working together, and we can patch that together with the 2 drones that the fire department has and the 2 drones that the police department have. We come together as one drone team. They train together, so we're all on the same page on what we're looking for and doing that. So yeah, a little more on the funding is that way. It's not necessarily totally out of our budget that we do, because we've got that funding available for some of that stuff, and some of that comes in with, we can purchase some of the training stuff that we do out of that.
Well, one other question, what was the cost of the 2 drones?
So those 2 drones, I think with the training and everything else, I want to say there was about a $30,000 purchase on those. So they're not cheap, but the nice thing is they keep coming down. The prices came down from where they were at one point. But when I say $30,000, you're talking about, that's also getting us the software that we need to be able to put up over, like Nick was talking about, diagramming crime scenes or fatal auto accidents. So with this drone, we're going to be able to, sometimes when you go out there and we have a fatal crash in Springfield Township, that road might be shut down for 2 hours, depending on going out there and doing all that measurements. That's going to be able to reduce that time significantly for us, maybe down to an hour or less, to be able to get the information that we need. So yeah, it's gonna make us more efficient in what we're doing, speeding up some of those processes. So,
Cheaper than a helicopter.
Yeah, a lot cheaper than the gas in a helicopter.
Just
Talked
gas.
about the battery life. They can bring those things down pretty quick and change it within probably a couple, 2-3 minutes, get the battery changed and get it right back up there too. So.
Have you thought of getting the fire department has the CERT teams that come out and help in emergencies? Have you thought about doing something with them, or?
So we work with them.
Civilian drones at times?
Yeah, we work with the police department. We'll work with the fire department and the search team. So we'll train with them. We'll talk to Captain Miller, who just got recently promoted from the fire department. I know he's kind of in charge of the CERT team there, but to make sure that we're up to speed with what they're training and what they're doing with the citizens, we stay on the same page with them on that. Yes, sir.
$30,000, what's the useful life of those drones most likely?
Well, that's the nice thing, like Nick said, when we started purchasing those and looking at those, we're like, all right, so when we know technology is changing so quickly. So we wanted to make sure, just like the body cameras, if we're going to get into this purchase and we're going to look at that, how long are we going to get this for, and how long are they going to last? Drones haven't been around a long time. But we know within a year and a half we're going to get upgraded with the new drones. So, we're thinking at least a 3 to 5 year. But like I said, I don't think the pricing of it, the drones is not just that expensive.
It's not $30,000 each year.
No. It's a one-time purchase. We get the software. It's just going to be the maintenance and upkeeping it, and if there's updates in the software that we purchase too. So.
And I should add to that, if I can, real quick,
Yep.
that 3rd drone is in addition. We get to keep these. So that 3rd drone was, if that software or if that technology gets to the point where they put out another one, I think it's within the next. Just thinking through that, it might be within the next 5, but they're saying in the next year and a half they will have another one out. Their goal, I think, is by the end of this year. So we will end up getting a 3rd one, and they've told us we can keep the smaller one that we have here. We'll keep that one, and then we'll certainly keep the bigger one that we'll be able to do the majority of the stuff with.
I think when we take care of them, they should last a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty durable piece of equipment.
It's a lot cheaper than a police cruiser.
It's a lot cheaper than a cruiser, yeah. I mean, when you start talking about these license plate readers and the drones and stuff like that, that's all started the process of what we're going through. Is like, hey, is the cost worth the reward of what we're doing? We're not just going out there and doing those things, and they know that we have to figure all that stuff out. And it took us Captain Niehaus was talking about the body cameras, how long it took us to really commit to making sure we're doing that. Hey, and then a grant comes up and we're like, boom, now we're ready to do that. So we're always looking for those opportunities with grants. to kind of come up with that stuff to help us prolong these things. And the state does a pretty good job of knowing what the equipment that we need as local law enforcement and trying to come up with opportunities for us to keep those costs down.
Doesn't sound stupid, but
No.
are they bulletproof?
No. I doubt it.
I think the general maintenance is just the batteries, you know, after a year or two of use, you just replace the batteries.
Yeah.
You know, the propellers, like you say, they're not hitting anything, and the electric motors are pretty bulletproof. I mean, they don't go bad.
I appreciate
You know,
it.
so anyway, batteries,
Yeah.
maintenance wise.
Cameras can go bad.
All right, well, we've got one more topic. We're going to bring in Sergeant Mullins. He's going to kind of go quick because I know we're getting close on time, and I do not want to keep you here all night. But he's going to speed through the Star Chase technology real quick. And then once we're finished with that, if you guys want to stick around and talk to us, we'll stick around and we can come up and kind of look at some of the stuff and answer some more questions at that time. So, all right, thanks, Nick.
How's everybody doing tonight? Great. Good. So just quickly, I'll go through this. The Guardian HX, it's the handheld GPS launcher. It's a tracking and tracking device. It allows us to, kind of how Chief Bly talked about pursuits. They're a contentious issue around the county, around the nation. This is kind of how we're mitigating things like that. So what it does is, this right here is a GPS tracking device. There is a radio transmitter and a GPS device inside this little dart here, just for your reference. What this does is it sends information back to the core view mapping system, and it allows us to track that vehicle. So as a supervisor, what I can do is, if one of my officers, they have the launcher here and they use it, they tag a vehicle, right? It allows me to take a step back and I can actually pull the core view mapping system up on my computer, and it allows me to monitor everything that's going on, speeds, location. So if speeds would be elevated, it allows me to terminate that pursuit if need be when things start to get dangerous. So the housing here, right? You pop it open, you can see it's not loaded, by the way. There's a heating element in here, okay? You load the dart inside, and there's a sticky adhesive on the end. It's also reinforced with a magnet. So a lot of times in the winter, we got inclement weather, it's raining, it's snowing, it's not going to affect how that dart attaches to the vehicle. Single shot. So
Is that a single dart?
This is a single dart.
Okay.
If you want to see it.
Yeah, I just.
It's not going to explode or anything.
He said we
So like I said, single shot, air compressed. This is not a less lethal force option. It's not a firearm. We're not going to be shooting anybody with it. We have tested it. If you shoot a window with it, it's not going to break the window or anything like that.
How's it work with the plastic body on cars anymore?
Yeah.
The plastic, like I said, there's an adhesive on the end.
Fiberglass.
It's about an inch thick, so it heats up. It takes about, they say 5 to 7 minutes, but it doesn't take 5 to 7 minutes. Like I said, we've trained with it, we've tested it, we've used it. The adhesive itself, without being heated up, it'll adhere to the vehicle and it's not going to come off.
What's its effective range for deploying it, shooting it? and hitting a
60 to
target?
90 feet. So it comes out at 37 miles per hour. Yes.
What kind of scenarios would you use it?
It's a good question. So I got an example for you. So during the testing phase, one of my officers was on Compton Road. He locates a stolen vehicle. He takes a Star Chase launcher. He fires it at the vehicle. It adheres to the back of the car. So at that point, the vehicle takes off. It flees from us, right? They know it's stolen. There's kids around the area. They're stealing cars. They're doing whatever they're doing. It allowed us to take a step back and use our resources in a way that we could take another officer coming from a different part of the township. He was able to get in a position and throw stop sticks. Does anybody in here know what stop sticks are? So we were able to disable that vehicle. So at this point, we have a tracking device on it. We stop sticked it, so we deflated 2 of its tires. We stayed back. The vehicle continued down Galbraith Road. It ended up pulling off the road right on Vine Street. At that point, by the time we pulled up, the operator, he was running away from the vehicle, and we were able to deploy the canine.
So did the guy in the car, the operator, know that you had done that? Did
No.
he know? Okay, but if he did, if for some reason they recognized that and stopped, can he pull it off?
They could get out and pull it off, but at that point, another element to it is, whoever grabs this and holds on to it is going to leave a fingerprint. So we
Yeah,
can pull,
yeah, that's true too. I
so we
was
can
just-
pull a fingerprint off it and we can identify it that way. What's that?
I said, can I have that back?
Yeah. At that point, kind of tying it all in together, if the vehicle stops and the suspects flee, we're able to use the drone. We can launch the drone, get the drone in the
Oh,
area.
there you go.
Kind of get a visual, right? So we disabled the vehicle, we tagged it, we're tracking it, and we are able to better deploy our resources. And that
But
is
when it
the-
hits the car, they can't tell that something hit it or hear it.
I'm sure they might be able to tell a little. It's a loud thud. So it might sound like if you're driving down the road and somebody throws a rock at your vehicle, it might sound something like that. But they're not going to know what's going on at that point.
But they're gonna see your patrol car or whatever, aren't they? Aren't they gonna know?
So another good question, there's two different models. So there's a vehicle mounted option, which we don't have. We have the handheld launcher. So a little more versatility. We can get out on foot, we can go into these neighborhoods, and it allows us to have the element of surprise. Like we can hide behind another vehicle, we can hide behind this apartment building. The element of surprise, you can come up, you can tag it, we can fall back, and then we can track it.
And nobody's gonna see you.
There's a
Just out
possibility.
and around, I mean, that, just carrying something like that
Yeah, I mean, there's always the possibility that somebody's
would
gonna
look
see it.
suspicious. They
But they're
might
not-
call the police because they
Correct.
think you've got something.
We're already gonna be there, so we can.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, they're gonna
Yes.
think, okay, maybe we
Yes.
got a terrorist or something going
Yep,
on.
that's always a consideration. Good.
Yes, how many, do those guardians do we have?
We have two.
Two? Those all just special patrol guys that have them, or it's just issued that we hear about stolen vehicles?
So we're training everybody.
Okay.
We're training everybody on it. Everyone's going to know how to use it. And it's not only for stolen vehicles. I mean, obviously, we can tag trailers, heavy equipment. We've had issues where construction sites, they've stolen heavy equipment. If we get in a situation where we need to tag a forklift, for instance, we can do that.
What's the tracking range once it's
That's a good question, too. I forgot to hit on that. So if I tag a vehicle out in this parking lot, it can go all the way to Columbus. And basically what our Hamilton County Dispatch can do is we'll send something to Columbus Dispatch, and they'll also be able to log in and see where the vehicle is. So I could view it all the way to Florida if I wanted to. The range is unlimited.
So if you use it, is it reusable or do you gotta get a new?
So the darts are not reusable.
That's what it is.
There's a crush point right here. It's going to crush it, but there's an annual fee. We pay that fee, and then they send us a new one each time we use it. So these are not reusable. The launcher itself is.
Mr. McCoy, that fees, it's minimal.
Yeah, it's minimal fee. It's all encompassed in the initial purchase.
And I'll say it's unlimited darts. So we for that one small fee, it's only a couple $100 a year. It's very minimal. We can shoot as many of these darts as we want to. So we
One of
have
those
It's
is
compressed
enough.
air.
5 deployments today. They're going to
So
send.
there's
us
the
to-
heating element.
Do they recycle them, reuse them?
They are not recyclable. No.
They don't rejuvenate them or anything like that?
No, ma'am. At that point, the radio transmitter and the GPS is crushed,
Yep.
so it's not usable any longer. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Are these only used in unexpected situations? And if not, are you getting warrants for them, or how's that work?
So the Fourth Amendment, so we're operating under exigency, right? You have no expectation of privacy. So, sir, what's your name?
Jim?
Jim. So if somebody gets in Jim's car, basically it's a stolen vehicle, and we tag it, they have no expectation of privacy in that vehicle.
If it's an investigation, is an ongoing investigation, and we're going to put a GPS on that vehicle, we're going to get a search warrant for it, and it's not going to be this GPS. It'll be something different. So this is just for, it's going to be in the cars for the officers responding to incidents or coming across something where this would allow us to basically stop. And most of the time, it's going to be for vehicles that are fleeing from us. The point of it is to put something on there so we can actually still try to apprehend somebody. Officers are going to pull back, turn their lights off. They're going to basically say, hey, you're good, go ahead and go, like a lot of agencies are doing these days. But our hope is that they don't know that the tracker's on there. And we're going to continue to try to watch that and get officers in the area for when, if it's a stolen car, whenever that car gets ditched, whenever they stop, that's fine. But our goal is to get that car to slow down and not have us push it to the point where it gets out of hand or there's an accident. It really is a pursuit mitigation device more than anything. It's not really meant for investigative purposes.
So it's not a silver bullet, it's not gonna solve all of our problems, but we're gonna be able to increase officer safety and ultimately increase safety to the public.
Well, you want the silver bullet, but that'll put you out of your job, right?
Yes, it would.
We all benefit, right?
Right. Any other questions? Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll wrap it up. I know it's a little after 8. I appreciate it. There's some bottled water back there, a cookie if you need a little bit of energy before you go. We'll stick around. I really appreciate it. The support that we get in Springfield Township is huge. Like I said at the beginning of this, this is technology that we really believe is going to help us. I mean, you know, like we were talking about, the cost, keeping costs down, really keeping everybody safe and keeping us on the verge of being able to fight the crime that we need to be fighting and really getting the intel that we need. So, like I said, thank you again. And then come on up here, take a look at this stuff and rattle off some questions that we got. So have a good night and be careful going home.
Thank you.